Hello creators, how are you guys? It's great to hang out with you again for another Video Creators podcast episode like we do here every Tuesday. SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. It's great to listen to hang out with you guys here. And those of you who are watching the live stream, welcome. It's great to have you too. We have a great conversation to come up with for you guys here today with a guy named Mr. Ben Grubbs. Now, Ben, first of all, thank you for being here and hanging out with us.
Thank you for having
creators. Me. Oh man, I'm really looking forward to this. Ben and I were just catching up a little bit right before we started recording, and he's got a lot of good insights for you guys who are YouTube creators who are looking to grow your business to be financially sustainable, to grow your YouTube careers, to reach your goals. And you guys know this is hard. This is not like an easy thing. I know the people who are killing it on YouTube, they make it look easy, and you're like, I could do that. You know, all they're doing is playing video games, and or all they're doing is recording their family, hanging out and having fun. Like, I have a family, we have fun. Like, and you try it and you're like, like you want to hit your head against the wall sometimes. Why is this not as easy as it sounds? And I think it's because sometimes we need people like Ben to come alongside us and his company and X10 Ventures to really help us reach those goals. And that's what Ben's going to do with us in a small way today. And there's other big ways as well that he can really help those of us take our businesses to the next level. So I'm excited to dive into this conversation with you guys. Those of you who are in the chat, we will save your questions for the end, and Ben and I will answer some of those best that we can. Laura is in the chat. She's my producer, and her channel is How to GYST. And so you can, she'll be taking your questions and putting them in front of us here as we go through this conversation. But you guys can put your questions there, and we'll jump into them here at the end. First of all, Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. You have a ton of experience in this space. You've been doing this for a really long time. Tell us your backstory and how you got started with helping creators in their businesses.
I started as a teenager myself as a creator. I think well before there was the internet and YouTube. So back then it was making TV shows on public access television. Then had a foray as a journalist and growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and was kind of going down the path of media communications. Then was drawn to the internet, spent time with Yahoo, and actually started with a company in Singapore to launch Yahoo Broadcast, so the video streaming business that they acquired from broadcast.com in the late 90s. So I was working on audio video streaming going back to 2001, in the early days of web and online video. It started actually working with YouTube pretty soon after it launched, actually. But by that point, I was actually leading marketing for eBay, and we had a company policy at the time actually not to advertise on television and just to really spend our money on digital media. And so what we were challenged with was actually how to grow our brand and actually how to tell the story of the eBay brand in these Asian markets. And my creative agency had suggested we look at this new video platform called YouTube, and so there we actually produced some content, and they said, this is when you have videos go viral, and they did actually get some traction in the Hong Kong market, and so from there was actually just seeing that again as a marketer kind of on the platform, less as an individual, but at that point as well, I worked with a lot of young entrepreneurs in the Asia region that were building their brand, building their business on the eBay platform, and we're starting off as a casual seller, would grow into be a power seller, and have these pretty robust businesses, can employ 50 or more people. And so I would just see this from the inside as this account, and you just watch this revenue climb every month, and then you find out, oh no, there's real business behind it, and someone started this in their college dorm room.
Yeah.
After that, I spent some time with Turner Broadcasting, still in Asia. So I spent 15 years in total actually living and working in the Asia region. And with Turner, was also working with some young talent who were actually taking advantage of digital media to build out new IP. And so we were actually investing alongside them and seeing how we could actually develop new IP franchises on the internet. And again, also using YouTube at that point. And so at this side was actually having the experience of YouTube as a media company. So at first it was as a marketer, second as a media company, and then I joined Google in 2012 and was tasked to actually grow the YouTube creator ecosystem across Asia Pacific, initially in a marketing capacity. So to really evangelize YouTube, and that this was a place to showcase great talent, and as I was saying before, kind of build out a brand, build out a business. And had done that for a while, focused on content strategy, worked on the launch of YouTube Kids. And then I came back to the US in late 2015 and took on the role to lead the top creator partnerships team globally. So that actually gave me a really interesting lens, just watching the platform emerge across all markets around the world, and seeing kind of trends and insights from there. And I think a lot of the activity I'd seen over my career, again, I'd say being first a creator myself at a young age, and then kind of working with creative talent, I just felt that there was a lot more to do, and was really excited on the prospect of actually having an independent company that can invest into this ecosystem and focus squarely actually on the creators themselves.
Yeah. Wow. So just off the top of your head, how many creators do you feel like you have seen grow their hobby into like this full-time income, successful business on YouTube? Just I know I was just kind of putting you on the spot here, but just take a guess.
I say, but personally, in interacting, I've interacted probably with dozens.
Right. Yeah.
I guess like seeing, or just like observing on the platform. This would be just be in the hundreds.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I did take some joy. I think when I was with the company and spotting, I always like looking at channels like under 100,000 subscribers, and just studying some of the metrics and seeing where they were actually getting strong engagement, and then you kind of dig into it a little bit more with the content. Actually, two of my nieces have actually been really good talent spotters. Actually, going back to like 2009, we're actually identifying creators for me, and quite small at the time, and then actually pretty robust today. And then my kids have also been a great source of actually talent spotting as well, and just seeing like who resonates with them. And who they actually ask me in the past of like, are you going to meet this person? And if you do, like, I need to come with you for the meeting. And It's like, well, no, this is my job, and you need to be in school. And it's like, no, Dad, like, I need to join you for this meeting. And so seeing who resonates with them. But yeah, across the board, I've seen a fair share of folks that, and you hear a lot of this, I think, in the origin story. In the early days of YouTube was very accidental fame and fortune. They needed a place to just share video, and YouTube was a great or an easy way to go and do that, or was really just like having fun and playing around. Actually, either with siblings or with family members or with friends. And then you kind of go away and you look back and like 6 months later, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of positive comments and people like what I'm doing. Yeah. So I would hear those stories quite a lot, and less today. I think it's pretty clear today that there's money to be made in making online video on a platform.
My favorite part of that story is that you included your kids in your business, which I really like doing. But that's awesome. We have a good comment there from Team WNJ, who says, Tim, can I be the devil's advocate here? You asked Ben how many people he's seen succeed, but how many has he seen fail? A lot more, I would assume, which is why you guys exist, right? Or one of the reasons, I would assume, right?
I think what I've noticed on YouTube, and actually I find a very similar thing at eBay, and it was kind of around months 5 to 6 seemed to be kind of like a turning point, that either you kind of break through and continue to grow, or you just stall.
Month 5 or 6, you said?
Months 5 to 6
that makes sense.
When I would go back and look at a lot of channels that would kind of have some pretty rocket growth in their first year, or kind of into the second year, and I'd start to go back and see like when did the curve start to really notch up, and it was around that point. And I think and it reminded me again when I was at eBay and actually working with sellers. There was a similar thing you kind of say on YouTube of consistency. That was the same thing there, and I think it's kind of like you have to stick this through, and you have a lot of machine learning and the algorithm kind of suggesting videos, and that plays a big part in how channels kind of succeed. And I think if you're erratic in your kind of with your upload, the time when you're kind of uploading, or that frequency, or if it's just not really clear, like what is the proposition that you're kind of offering, and why are you actually asking someone to go and subscribe and follow your channel and have that actually show up in their own subscription feed. It may take some folks some time kind of in those first 6 months to work that out. But I think if you kind of get down to some of that consistency, that's when I was generally kind of seeing folks kind of break out. On my front, I was always just, again, kind of evangelizing or trying to build out, partnerships. And so yes, I think there would be a fair number of channels that have actually not succeeded. But I guess on my side, it's just filtering. Is like I was generally always trying to filter and look at who are those who are kind of breaking through, because that's then who you're going to go start to spend more time on.
Yeah, I think that 5 to 6 months is probably about what I've seen too in my own community, where there's a lot of people who think like, oh, I could do this. It looks so easy. And they subscribe to channels like mine. And then after, probably around 5 or 6 months, they're just doing like a face palm. And they're like, this is not nearly as easy as it looks. It's just like you go to a concert and you watch some musician. They just make it look so effortless, but you don't see the years of practice. Or an athlete, like someone like, yeah, I could play football, I could be a pro. Like it doesn't look that hard. It's like, yeah, but you don't see all the back work that went into it. And I think the same thing is true on YouTube. I mean, we see people at the height of their success, but we don't see all the grind and all the determination, everything that went to get people to that point. So
yeah, and I think that on like the other side is like maybe around like years 5 to 6 is another kind of. I think there's definitely more between months 5 and 6 and years 5 and 6, but I've also kind of seen that around like years 5 and 6. There's a piece of like, okay, I've done this, done what I've been doing for a fair amount of time, and it's either I need to kind of get a creative reboot, or I also can start to, the content and the challenge and what I'm doing gets a little bit stale. You also have a little bit of like, depending on where you started and the age demo, is how are people actually growing up with you, or
exactly.
Does that start to kind of falter? And I think for some it becomes it's a tough part, because you've had a lot of success, and then you're not really seeing that kind of going the same way you've experienced before, or you've been so much like into it day to day. So I think there's it's not just, I think, in the start. I think it's also later as well, even after success. It could be just as hard. Yeah,
because, and I recommend this to people all the time, like they'll be doing the same thing for a few years, and then their channel just kind of starts to plateau. And I'm like, oh no, okay, like the next thing that's going to happen is going to start to dip. People are like, not even television shows last more than like a few seasons. I mean, a really good one might go like 7 seasons, but people just get bored. They want something new, fresh, exciting. And so it's like you have to continually reinvent yourself, keep upping your game, and finding new ways to deliver that value proposition that your audience subscribed for to that target audience. And yeah, so I'm like, before that dip happens, like even before the plateau is like after like a year and a half, 2-3 years, like you need to start thinking about what's next to keep the momentum going and switching on them even before people are indicating that you need to. So otherwise it's hard to turn around. So tell us a little bit about Next 10 Adventures and what you're doing there and what you're looking for and how you're helping and serving creators. And then I'll kind of talk through some of the mistakes and things that creators are making in terms of how they're growing a business around their own brand.
Sure. So it is an adventure. We've been active since March of this year, so just about 6 months or so in action. So we have offices in Los Angeles and also in Singapore. As I was saying earlier, I spent 15 years of my career in the Asia region, and I felt it important to kind of stay put in the region and have an active hand there, and also just from the time I spent with YouTube and just understanding where user growth is actually occurring. A lot of it is actually in the Asia markets, in places like India and Southeast Asia. And so just looking ahead, to the future, it felt to be a really important region. So that's on that front. I think the name itself, just to give a little bit of background on that, So over the last couple of years, myself and the team were kind of at YouTube working with a lot of the top creators. Something I actually like to ask folks was, how are they thinking about their next 10 years? And what I wanted to see was who actually has a vision and a vision for the future, and some plan that goes beyond the next week, the next month, or maybe even the next 3 months. Generally, you kind of just see like, maybe I've kind of thought out for a year. And I think that in the rare case, you kind of have the multi-year, but I use that more just to kind of as a thought starter of like, this is a long-term out. And so I think there's, folks who've actually been active, for the past 10 years, on the platform. I'm very grateful for what they have. And so again, and it's like, well, if you've enjoyed this is your career, this is your livelihood. How are you planning? How are you investing yourself into your own future? Or are you really just kind of taking this a step back, and you're taking what comes into you? So on the focus of the company, as outside of the regions, like three of the categories that we're interested to focus on in the outset are kids and family, education and learning, and health and well-being. And these are three that we see a lot of growth opportunity, but also in some areas like an undersupply. And so education and learning is an area that I was personally involved with in the Asia region when I was starting off actually in the content strategy team in 2013. And it was one area I kind of found that it produces a lot of value to the consumer, but it's also content that's, I think, relatively to others, it's harder to make. It's harder to produce on a regular basis. It takes a lot of time into the research and the pre-production. And so it's stuff that you're not generally going to be knocking out videos every single day. But again, I think that there is a view that there was a lot of value there to the consumer. And so what I was looking at a lot in the Asia region was that I think if folks were going into the education space, it was generally going to be a for pay model because parents would gladly kind of pay for their anything involved with their child's education. And so what I was seeing is like there's got to be a way though that you can actually have great content actually made freely available. And for a lot of young people who are coming online in these emerging markets and getting access to the internet through these mobile phones, what they have the access, but then they don't really have the supply. And so that was an area that kind of stuck with me. And I was trying to encourage this a lot before when I was at YouTube and encouraging people to become producers in this area. And so for Next 10 Ventures, like we care deeply about the space. And so one of the things which we're working on right now is to develop an incubator focused on education and learning creators, and to provide support, to people who need that support in the early stage of their career. And so what we're looking at is diversity in the creators themselves, the subject matter, and the geographic and where they're coming from geographically. And so that I would say content it's not always going to come out of the U.S. for a global audience. Right. This also needs to be coming out of local markets for that local audience. Yeah. So that's one area where we're kind of looking to play a hands-on role in the early stage. And I'd say like on the later stage is really around acceleration. And I think on that front is, again, to look at folks that actually have a vision for their future, are really trying to build out a business with what they have. And so more of the entrepreneurial type. And it's an area that's always personally intrigued me to kind of to play that part. And so to actually bring in folks with operational experience that have worked on brand marketing, brand development, have worked on content development, also worked on scaling products and technology across international markets. And so what the team that we're actually looking at building in-house are going to be folks like that actually have that know-how, that experience, and they bring that to the table. Yeah. And then the second piece, so we can then work with that creator and actually shaping that business and product plan. But then the second piece, and I say just as important, is then we can invest against that.
Yeah. And did I see online correctly? Did it say 50 million or something is the fund, or was the fund, or something like that, or the initial round of something like that?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, so we've secured 50 million in financing to then to support this mission that we have.
That's awesome. Cool. So, what I hear you saying is that there are a lot of different skills you need to pull this off. I mean, it's not just about growing a popular YouTube channel. I mean, that's obviously part of it, but you said like there's all this, you mentioned like branding and what else did you mention? Some of the other, like as part of the acceleration and incubation periods, like there's just a lot of skills you're helping these creators acquire. And I think sometimes as creators, like we forget that, you know, we're like, oh, it's going to become popular and everything's going to be amazing. And no, there's a lot of other skills here. So one of the main problems I see with creators who are getting started, or not even just getting started, who are like even successful. I mean, I have clients who have 1.4, 2.8, 10 plus million subscribers, and I know the revenue that's coming in, and sometimes there's a channel with like 20,000 subscribers who's making more than the person with 1.4 million subscribers. Like, so there's not like a direct like correlation between subscribers and views and revenue necessarily. It seems to me to be more about the business model that's wrapped around the channel, which is what you Next 10 Adventures kind of comes alongside of them. Like, hey, look, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like we see that you guys have a lot of potential. We want to partner with you, take you through this incubation front, this period, and then this acceleration period, and really help you grow your brand and your business. Maybe invest into that as a part of that whole deal, and helping them acquire those skills. What are some of the big problems that you see, like creators? What are the mistakes that creators are making when they're trying to build their online presence, their online careers, especially from a financial standpoint, business standpoint? Where are they missing in their efforts?
Well, I think one area, one monetization area that can also become a challenge is content marketing. So, you know, I think as you start to gain followers and subscribers, you then get, you know, inbound, you know, outreach from agencies, from brands themselves who are looking to work with you and to get in front of that audience that you actually have. And I think one of the challenges there is if you don't already have your kind of content strategy set, I've seen for some, they then start to become, they kind of live for the next brand deal.
I know.
And so the content of the channel really becomes like who is paying them.
Yeah.
And from that standpoint, and so there's not so much of a baseline kind of content strategy or a content format. It really becomes kind of dictated by the marketplace. Now I know for some creators that they you know, they only want to produce a certain type of content that has a certain kind of price point, and you know, AdSense is not enough to offset that production cost, and so they need to have additional revenue kind of coming in from sponsorship. And so on that front, you know, if they can't actually have that at a high frequency, then it just becomes you know, somewhat selective in the rate that they're actually kind of producing content actually with that brand sponsorship. But
yeah, totally.
Yeah, the one piece there is like there's an awful lot more money kind of going into the marketplace in content marketing than there really ever has. And just also kind of watching the creator career journey. You know, when I started, you know, at YouTube back in 2012, I think there's still this notion of like I might be working with a brand, but I don't really want to be upfront about it and to my audience. And there's this whole perception of like, am I selling out if I'm actually kind of working with this brand? And I found that's kind of like moved on.
Yeah.
And then the next piece was it's like, you know, I might have some merchandise for sale, but I'm not really going to talk about it, or I'm not really going to put it in the link in my video description. And I think, you know, I saw a lot over the last like 18 to 24 months, like a big kind of surge in merchandise actually coming from creators. And it's a lot more upfront actually in the content that they're producing.
Yeah.
And I think from that side, it's, you know, I think for some, if, you know, they don't really want to kind of work to the brand brief and just kind of what that next kind of content marketing deal can be, but actually I have a really engaged audience, there's other ways you can start to generate revenue and actually have some commercial, you know, viability. And in some cases you might be able to make, I think, more through the direct consumer fees than you actually would be through the brand content. So I think that it's a challenge in that there are a lot of different avenues for monetization, but I'd say more so this is actually a great time, and there's a lot of opportunities, then it's how are you looking at structuring what you're doing, what kind of motivates you. I know for some folks, they don't really get motivated by working with brands, which is fine. So then it's like, great, then you need to have an alternative kind of monetization thought through, and that you're actually executing against, and so that you can kind of compensate. Otherwise, like, this might be a short-lived kind of career.
Yeah. And I think for any of you guys who are like, oh, well, I'm just doing this like for AdSense, or I'm just doing this for fun or whatever, you need a business model, and it's not because it's like, I know some people feel like, well, I just want to give to my audience. I don't want to like take anything from them right now. But as your channel grows, it's like you need revenue, you need money to make that sustainable. I have someone on my team who's 20 hours a week just on responding to email. Like, that's it. She spends 20 hours a week just doing email. And so, like, if you want to serve your audience well, this isn't necessarily only about, although it's part of it, like about like, how do I get rich? How do I make money? But it's also like, you need to make money so you can keep creating the content that the audience is revolving around. So this is really important for all of us. You got a good question. And it kind of goes into what I wanted to talk next, Ben. For creators who are currently going down that path, who are just like, just AdSense, or just brand deal to brand deal to brand deal, and then one doesn't come 1 month, and like all stressed out and they can't make payroll anymore, or whatever the case might be. What process do you recommend that they should start taking to go down a better path in terms of the revenue around their channels and the businesses that they're forming? And this is kind of what Gypsy A Million Miles is asked, like, so what's the process? What process should they be following in terms of making this financially sustainable for them?
So I think it's going to depend, obviously, I think on the creator and the nature of the content that they're producing. And so I think one is kind of understanding what that production cost is, what the current kind of frequency of output is, and I mean, maybe what the desired kind of output is. So if you're producing on a weekly basis and you're trying to move to a more frequent side, I think from that side, seeing I think just overall, like, how much production cost is actually needed, for that, and then how does that actually break down for yourself and for other people in the team, if that's the case. And you were talking just before around someone actually just doing more kind of community marketing management, so just responding to emails. I think the other side, I know for some folks is really trying to ramp up to actually afford an editor and actually have someone actually do that, and so they're getting that time of their day back, and so they're not spending all their time just in pre-production and production and also post-production, but it's more of they kind of do the first two and they hand off the last piece. I've seen that be a huge time saver, but also just, I think, help folks out from a mental health standpoint, because I think otherwise it just leads to a lot of burnout, and if you're kind of producing on a high frequency basis. The other thing that on YouTube I was monitoring, this is going back over a year ago, was how some creators are actually weaving live content actually into their production slate. And so if they actually have more than one video a week kind of going up, what they were finding is that they could actually produce live video, actually archive that, and the results of that archive were performing kind of on par with other videos that they were kind of producing on their channel that week or that month. And so that had a huge, both time savings and production cost savings. So just thinking about like the formats themselves and what kind of goes through. So I think one is just having that handle on the baseline in terms of what is going out. And then I think it goes back to what we were saying before, just of the different revenue streams. And so you have AdSense itself. I think with some of the formats, like kids content, I know is one where there's a lot of archive value. So you can produce content and 2-3 years later, it's still generating views and still generating AdSense. I think there's topical content, news type content that you might not see more than like a 7-day kind of shelf life on that content, and there's a need to continually produce new content to actually keep the AdSense, that type of revenue stream to be healthy. So again, I think there's a range there based on actually what you're kind of producing. But I think the other pieces we were just talking about before with like consumer products and merchandise. I think the other piece just around sponsorships and just other direct fan kind of fees. As you have that community and you're doing community engagement, there are more ways now to actually bring in incremental kind of revenue streams. Some of them are kind of tied to live content, so it goes back to that format. If that's actually not in the mix, maybe something to kind of consider. That there's new ways to kind of monetize content in the live format that are not otherwise available for VOD.
Just video on demand. Yep.
Yeah, video. Yeah, so then I'd just be looking at that mix, and then if you're having, I mean, I've seen this before with creators in the past. You get some interesting signals in the community feedback around their appetite for more, and I think on that side you can start to look at some, segmentation, and that then from that side then you get into the direct consumer fees.
Yeah.
Whether that is in some type of like community kind of sponsorship, or into kind of merchandise, or if this even kind of moves into things that might happen like offline on ground, like tours and events from that standpoint.
Yeah. So something that I heard that you talk a lot about too is like you need to focus on content and community and commerce, like those three things. Can you talk a little bit about both of those? Keep going, but like those three things is a part of the process of what a creator needs to really consider for making their content financially sustainable.
Sure. So I'll start with community. What I think a lot about is just fanships and that relationship between the creator and their audience. Mm-hmm. It's something that we're kind of focused on at Next 10 Ventures to look at is how we can actually play a role in strengthening the marketing CRM aspect. And so I think as more and more creators are kind of growing on these digital platforms and actually adding followers and subscribers, I think it becomes important to start to understand a little bit more of like who are these people actually that are following, subscribing to you, and how do you start to think about the segmentation. And so the same way you would have at eBay, what we used to think about is like you have the power seller, and on the flip side, these power sellers actually have power buyers. And these are people who are actually repeat kind of purchasers from them. And so I think in a video platform, it's like the power viewer and the person who is, within an hour of upload actually watching and commenting. You can kind of see this actually in the comment stream and start to get a sense of like in that community, who are these super engaged fans. Then I think that there's a mechanism of how do you recognize them, how do you reward them, and have any kind of further engagement. And I think some of that actually has a parallel back into commerce application. So that's some. I think there's a lot more.
Sure.
There's a lot more opportunity there, and that's an area that we're kind of looking into. And I think then the other side around commerce is just more around e-commerce, particularly. So as I was saying before, I think it's good to see the advancement on platforms like YouTube from early days when there might be kind of e-commerce. I mean, I went through an experience. This was back in probably in 2015, so actually not that long ago. I actually went through and I was trying to buy merchandise from a whole host of top creators, and I found the experience actually very disappointing. For some, I would get onto a landing page and there would be 4 SKUs and 3 of them were sold out. It made me wonder, like, when was the last time they actually updated this page? And it was just an afterthought, I think, for a lot of folks.
Right.
And so I think one of these things is like if you're going to build that into your repertoire, into the business, you should look after it. And I think I think I would be for some like a net promoter and a really big booster for that creator. But then after that type of experience, like there's someone else, I spent over $100 on product, and it took 8 months actually for the whole collection of different things that I bought to arrive.
8 months?
8 months. And I went through all the different stages of like, I'm excited to get it. Wait, why isn't it coming? Now I'm very disappointed. I'm so upset. Now I've gotten over it. And then it arrives.
And then you feel like you got like robbed. Oh yeah, I just bought a computer.
Well, I'm not going to buy something from that person again. But
no, never.
Yeah, so I think I think the same way you have community management around the videos and the uploads, it's like if you're going to enter in that space as well, it's like definitely do not kind of like underthink that aspect, because you could turn turn off people and actually have some pretty bad experiences. But I think when it's managed well, it can become a really big kind of vibrant piece of the overall mix of what you're doing.
One of the part of the process for me that I kind of outline for people is like, you need to first know what the value proposition is of your entire channel / business. But the channel becomes a place where you start giving that value for free, whether it be an entertainment value or an educational value. Often the entertainment value is most accurately a relational value that you're portraying and providing. And then once you know the value is, then you're like, well, how can I deliver the same value that people are subscribed to my channel for? But maybe like if I'm giving 1x of it on my channel, how do I deliver 10x of that in a format people are willing to pay for? So they're already consuming that value from me. And then I said, hey, like you want this next level, here you go. $10.99 or $2,000, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It's just like, how do you sell that same value? Because I see a lot of times creators, one of the mistakes is they'll come in and they'll be doing one thing on their channel, but then they see all these other channels doing like selling merch, for example, maybe. And so they'll be like, oh, well, I need to have a t-shirt. And they'll sell like, 5, 10, like they'll sell some, whatever. But it's not aligned to the value of why people are watching them in the first place. And so it just doesn't convert as naturally as if, you're have a family vlogging channel about helping encouraging young moms who just feel overwhelmed or something. And then you come out like you're telling those stories through your family's videos, and then you have something like a system or a process that moms can go through and like just make their lives less crazy or something. Like that value is aligned with why they're watching you in the first place, as opposed to just, some t-shirts or something like that. So I feel like you guys just really need to know your value proposition and the target audience who's consuming that, and develop content that attracts those people who are looking for that value, and then have a model that sells that value back to them. Because whether you're doing brand deals or just passive AdSense, you're selling something. It's just that in terms of AdSense, other people have figured out how to monetize your audience better than you have because they can afford to give a cut to a bunch of different people and still make, including you, and still make money on it. So I'm not dogging the AdSense model. I just think that I want creators to think a little bit bigger than just like an employee, where my job is to show up, work really hard, and then expect someone to just give me a paycheck at the end. And that's not really how it works all the time, most of the time on YouTube. So I want to get into some of these questions here, but two things before we do that. You guys got a lot of good questions coming, so we'll have some fun here. But what skills do you feel like a creator really needs to acquire in order to execute that whole process? Whether it's value prop, target audience, and like conversion, or it's content, community, commerce. What are those? I mean, beyond you gotta have great video content and social media skills, like more on the business side, what do they need to be thinking of?
Well, something I've been thinking about is that there are different types of different slices of creators. So I think on one hand you have some creators on platforms like YouTube that are artists and storytellers. And so I've found just through experience and working with some folks that are kind of that are like this, that they don't really kind of get up and get out of bed for a brand deal. They don't get excited by that. And so they have particular stories they want to go tell. They have a way that they actually want to go tell them, a style, and so it might kind of drive some kind of production costs, and then just get into the harsh reality of like, well, this is what this costs, and you want to do these types of special effects, and it's going to be $30,000-$40,000 out of pocket. Well, AdSense is you're going to struggle to kind of recoup that investment on AdSense alone. So then you need to be thinking about other revenue streams, and sponsorship is a key one for that. But I think I find some folks there kind of like in that category. Then I see some creators that are just entrepreneurs, and as I spent time with some folks, I'll say in this category, the channel is it is kind of second to some type of actual business. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, like they are making content kind of on YouTube and building a community, and it's really for that. It's marketing for an underlying brand business. Like the brand of the business didn't come later; it actually came first.
Yeah.
and the YouTube piece was, executed really well. And I think, I would see this a lot with companies who kind of advertise on YouTube. Like, you can rent or you can own. So you can rent and just, buy true view ads, and you might have a channel and maybe it kind of hosts a bunch of your actual commercials. Or you can go build something and build out your own brand channel in the same way that I think any creator is kind of doing, and having personality, building that community. But I think if you're a young kind of upstart company, and you don't really want to delve into television or the target market, if you're trying to reach people under 30, a lot of that audience is going to be found efficiently through online platforms like YouTube. So the entrepreneurial kind of mindset. And so I think on that front is you could just treat a lot of your channel and your costs as a marketing cost from that side. Then I think there's educators, and I've met some folks in this group that actually turn AdSense off. They actually feel like principle that I don't want to monetize the channel. I don't want people actually seeing ads against the content that I'm actually that I'm putting up. And so from that side, then it's like, well, okay, are you surviving based on grants or other kind of income kind of coming through, or what is the overall kind of ambition you have, and how you kind of going forward that way. And then the last is like opinion leaders, so people that do product reviews, general commentary. I think there's a lot of vlog content that's kind of in this as well. I think, and then on that front, it goes back down to like format and the format that you're kind of producing. I know for some folks, you can actually do product reviews. Again, from an editorial standpoint, it's like, I don't want to be paid by the company that I'm obviously reviewing the product. And so AdSense is a key thing. And then it's like, if I'm going to take on sponsorship, it has to come from another product category. So it could come, if I'm doing tech reviews, then I'll take money from travel companies or something like that's
or
not
website hosting or something.
From that side. So I mentioned that because I also find that there's a different mindset, or there's a different agenda objective, and I've seen creators in all four of those different groups. And so I wouldn't want to kind of generalize some approach, and kind of first understand who are you, where are you coming from, what are you actually trying to achieve, and I could then start to see, okay, you're probably more of this mindset. And then you kind of go forward from there and start to then tailor some type of solution based on who they are and what's motivating them.
Yeah. A book that was really helpful for me, you guys, is a book called The Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. And so you don't need to get a business degree to really pull a lot of the stuff off that we're talking about here. But it does help to know some of the skills you need to acquire. In my opinion, what is a P&L and how do you read it? And what choices and decisions do you make from a profit loss statement? And all of the basics that go into running an actually financially sustainable business. I found that were really helpful for someone like me who doesn't have a business background, just going through that book. And it's like $10 or something. I don't know. Not sponsored. I'm just telling you it was helpful for me. And I would recommend that you guys who are thinking about that and taking this seriously, go check that out. Cool. And so we got a bunch of questions here. The role that Next 10 Ventures plays in all this is for creators is that you're looking for talent, and you're looking for creators who are in this position, who have built, sustainable, or I should say sizable audiences. And you're like, we want to partner with these channels and take them through our business process or incubation and acceleration, and really help them meet their goals for YouTube. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say at a broad level, went through the process to actually secure the $50 million in financing to just to invest actually into the creator ecosystem. So from my standpoint, what I kind of felt was that there's a lot of upside and growth still to come in this space. As I've talked about some of the evolutions of content marketing and e-commerce, and how I've seen that kind of evolve just over the last 5 years. And I think there's still a lot of growth ahead on both of those fronts. And so on one side, what we're looking at doing is invested into tools, products, and services that could aid and strengthen creators in actually what they're doing. think that the other front is, really interested to kind of see, who are some of these creators who are actually trying to build their brand, build their business, and have kind of have a start of the game plan for what they're actually trying to do. And I think where we're trying to see ourselves is coming into this space and to kind of invest, invest into them and alongside them.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture of things that we're trying to do at a little bit of scale, where we're going to try to ideate and incubate something and build out that product technology that can benefit a lot of different creators. And I think on the other front is, looking at folks that already have. They are that early stage, and we are that seed stage investor, and I guess in the classic sense of in a startup, and prepared to play that role, and take the risk in that early stage.
Yeah, that's great. So, Sunil Singio, I don't know how to say your name. Sorry. What are the points that you consider when you're spotting talent when you're looking for these channels?
Well, I think we're looking for longevity. I think it is one, or a sense that this actually has, there is a good prospect actually for longevity. We're not looking to kind of come into things and then exit quickly. And so I think for us, like as we kind of name the company kind of Next 10 Ventures, like we want to have kind of an eye for the next 10 years and really kind of partner with folks that we feel we can grow together.
Yeah.
Is one thing. So I think then with that, then what we're trying to see is like, are there the building blocks of a brand? Is there a personality? I think you can see some of this stuff, I think through the community feedback and how and why people are kind of resonating with what's being produced. I think from that standpoint, and then I think is this kind of playing in this space where we think also that there's a lot of upside, and so that's why I mentioned those categories before with like kids and family, education, learning, health, and well-being. Not to say that the others actually don't, but I think like those are areas that I feel quite particular that there is a lot of upside, but also a lot of great benefit in the market in general.
Yeah. And so that goes right along with this next question from CBVTV. I was wondering if certain subjects are just more likely to fail. It doesn't sound like you're saying that those are the three and all the other ones are more likely to fail. It just means that that's what you are kind of focusing in for Next 10 Ventures, right?
Correct. Yeah, I think I think just in the general thing of for any new business is focus, and so I think for us is like we're not going to try to just spread investments across 15 different things and see kind of what sticks, so we're kind of trying to take an initial point of view, on that front in terms of the categories, and so I think that there's a lot of great depth and upside in gaming and music. So, but I also feel on that side as well is you could probably spend all your time just doing gaming, from what I've seen before. So that's one side. I think the other piece, just from a geographic standpoint, something actually I haven't really touched on before, but I was talking actually around the Asia region and why we're kind of like focused on that because there is a lot of upside, and so it's something I definitely feel over like the last 12 months. With data and access in markets like India and in Southeast Asia, like in India, there's one of the telcos there that is, got a new data plan that's like $5 US. It's like all you can use, and so you're seeing a big run up of people coming online on their mobile phone that have really not been connected before, or consuming online video through a mobile phone that were otherwise not doing that before.
Right.
So what I've been observing at a kind of a macro level is that you see markets like Indonesia, Philippines, India with a big kind of run up of new people kind of coming in. These are also local markets, Bahasa, Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Tagalog kind of content. So English content will travel to some extent, but I think there's also a lot of opportunity to look at how you might be localizing some of your content for these new audiences that are actually coming online. And I think then as, if you're really kind of thinking out into the future, you have a new audience kind of coming online, and monetization will follow. So I don't want to say that that's all there right now, so that's a robust market, but it's it's something just to be kind of aware of. I think for folks that are actually based here in the U.S., 80% of YouTube's consumption happens outside the U.S., and just seeing where there's a lot of growth. I was looking at some stats just earlier in terms of creators that are kind of in this 100,000 to 500,000 subscriber mark, but getting 5 million plus views a month.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a small percent are actually from the U.S. and there's a significant actually number from India, Indonesia, Vietnam, Brazil, Japan, Russia, Korea. So again, I think addressing some of these local markets, and I was looking at Instagram as well, and people actually producing video content on Instagram, and it's the same markets, or Russia, Indonesia, India, Brazil, and also Turkey.
Yeah.
So a lot of these the emerging market story, I think, is something to kind of just be mindful of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also, I think in these markets, people are going to be accessing content only through their mobile phone. They'll probably never watch video actually on a PC or a laptop. It's just going to be through their smartphone.
Yeah, I mean, on my channel, my number one demographic is U.S., but number 2 is India. So there's quite a significant traffic. I mean, I tried getting captions done in Hindi and other languages. Didn't really see that make a big impact. It seems like most of them are speaking English anyway, or something, was my impression. But it's certainly optimizing like titles and thumbnails for mobile, even the way you cut and edit video content, the size of the text, how close in, how tight you get on, you focus in the camera on the subject. A lot of those types of things are really important. Aki name asks, does all this apply to creators who are outside the U.S. as well? Everything we've talked about here, does it apply to creators who are in other countries who may or may not have what they feel like are the resources that we have here in the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the best monetized markets on YouTube globally is Japan. There you see the same kind of mix of AdSense to content marketing to direct consumer fees, but that's a market where there's a very high monetized rate. So just in terms of if you have 100 views, here in the U.S. you're going to have some percent of those actually monetized. And generally what I was seeing and talking with creators in the Japanese market and comparing that to creators in the U.S., sometimes it's like 2 to 3x, versus the U.S. market. So and I was just in Tokyo a couple weeks ago, and I feel like every single time I watched or clicked to actually watch a video, I got a pre-roll.
Yeah.
Every single time.
You need YouTube Premium.
Yes.
I got that and did not look back. That was definitely worth the money.
Yeah. I have 2 different accounts. So I was using the one actually without premium.
Okay.
Actually, just to see. I was actually curious to see who the advertisers were, and then I was just going through different videos, and every single time there's kind of a new ad popping up, and it just traced back to the folks I'm then talking to in the market. They're seeing a very high kind of monetized rate. I think on that front, I think in Brazil and in Spanish Latin America, so markets like Argentina and Mexico, I just know anecdotally, like very high kind of subscriber rate, relative to other regions, and so community growth there in the South American market is really robust. Seeing a lot of good growth actually coming out of the Middle East markets, Middle East and North Africa. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Turkey, Egypt, in these markets. And then I'd also just know anecdotally on the merchandise side, like some of those Middle East markets have a very high kind of monetized rate on consumer products relative to what you kind of see on AdSense. And so, I think it kind of pays to kind of look at your audience map and where you're strong, where you're not so much. And I think if emerging markets are actually not playing, into the distribution today, that might be something to kind of think about, because that is actually where a lot of the growth is occurring.
Yeah, and that answers your question, Mike, from Haunted Road Media, asking should we focus on a global market as opposed to U.S. only? And it sounds like you're saying absolutely, like you should be focusing on both. A lot of people are asking kind of the same questions, After Effects tutorials with Mikey, and a lot of people are asking, like, how do they get in touch with Next 10 Adventures and possibly work with you guys who are in those three niches you're referring to? How would they get in touch with you and with your business and what you're doing?
Yeah,
and who should that person be?
Sure. So, right now I suggest just going to next10ventures.com. We have a form on the site where you can actually submit your information, and we have folks in the team who will then get back in touch with you. That right now is the easiest way to do it.
Cool. So if you guys are listening to this later, I'll put a link to their website in the show notes. You guys can check it out, and you can contact them through there if you want more information about whether or not that's a good partnership for you guys and for them. And so you can check it out. So Ben, really appreciate your time and hanging out with us here and sharing with us some of your insights to all this. It's been really helpful for us. And the rest of you guys, if it's your first time here, I'd love to have you subscribe, whether you're listening to the podcast. We've got new episodes every Tuesday just to help you grow your YouTube audience so you can spread your message and reach people and change their lives. And today we've been talking about how to make that financially sustainable, because that is like a really, really, really big component of this, obviously. And if you're listening to the live stream, we've loved hanging out with you. Thank you, Laura, for taking all these questions and putting them in front of us and producing this. And all you guys the super chats, and those of you who have become members, I'm really looking forward to getting to know you inside the members only area on our YouTube channel. And we will see you guys again next week at 2 p.m. Eastern time on Monday for our live stream. And I'll see you guys then. Thanks for hanging out. Bye.